Hello everybody, welcome to Sane Game Studios. I'm Sane, I'm an amateur game developer, and welcome again to the Indie Side Episode 3. Today we're going to be looking at a fantastic little indie game called Graveyard Keeper. As it says, Episode 3, I did Episodes 1 and 2 on Blossom Tales 1 and 2. Great games, highly recommend. I recorded those before I bought a microphone and fixed my audio issues, so I don't know how well they are for watchability, but they are great games. I would highly recommend buying and playing the Blossom Tales games. But today we're doing Graveyard Keeper. So what do I have to say about Graveyard Keeper? First of all, a lot of fun. Super goofy, super silly, but also kind of morbid and dark at the same time, which is honestly like a fantastic mix. Like you're a guy who's, it plays a lot like Stardew Valley, but you're a guy who's a graveyard keeper, and your job is to take bodies as they come to the graveyard, get them buried and decorate the burial plots, and then you get ratings on your graveyard, and it equates to bonuses and like all this kind of stuff. But your amount of like freedom and agency with what you do with the bodies is probably one of the greatest things. Like you can just go the normal route and you can go ahead and bury them. You can also build a cremation station and you can cremate them and just burn them. The game also has a witch burning. I tried to get footage of the witch burning for you guys. Honestly, I went through some files and I accidentally deleted it, and then it was a huge hassle to start from a new game and get all the way to the witch burning. Like by huge hassle, I mean it would take me a couple hours, and let's be real here, I'm kind of lazy. But when you get these bodies, there's a lot of really fun things you can do with them. Like I said, you can bury them, you can cremate them, but you can also just like pick up the corpse and just like huck it in the river, which is like one of my favorite things. You don't really get anything for it, and then from what I didn't get far enough in the game to verify whether or not this is true, and I'll get into later why I didn't get far enough in the game, but apparently like the game implied, I think actually straight up stated that when you throw a body in the river, it washes up in town. And not like the main town, like the first town that you encounter, but there's another town to the south of that town across a bridge that you were unable to cross at the beginning of the game. And apparently the body washes up there. Like I said, I didn't get far enough into the game to verify that, but the fact that you can just take a dead body, just like throw it in the river, is pretty awesome. You can harvest parts of the body. You can take the flesh of that body, and you can sell it to the tavern, and they will serve it to the people of the village as meat. There is like a lot of freedom and a lot of ridiculous things you can do with like the corpses that you were given. The game does have a combat system. The combat system is not the greatest. It's pretty lackluster. But it's not a game that's focused on combat, so they didn't really need to put a whole lot of effort into the combat system. Combat is just something that they had to have, not necessarily something they spent a lot of time building. But like the meat and bones of this game is dealing with dead meat and bones. So the combat isn't really a priority, not only from a developer perspective, but also from a gameplay perspective. I found that not only did it not have a whole lot of need for combat, but it wasn't really a massive part of the gameplay. There's a lot of crafting that you can do, which usually comes like pretty common with games of this style. Like I said, it plays a lot like Stardew Valley, which is actually a pretty common thing that a lot of indie developers do. They'll take like a very successful game and they'll be like, it's like this, but, and this game is like, it's like Stardew Valley, but you're a graveyard keeper. And like honestly, it's a great mix. It's a great stylization. The crafting is done really well. You can position things with a fair amount of freedom with like your crafting stations and stuff like this. You are limited a little bit because like the game, like unlike Stardew Valley, which has like hard set like area boundaries like with like the farm, this game is much more open, a lot less transition screens, and because of that they had to use the interface of building to limit how much and where you can build, which honestly works out pretty well. They do give you enough space. I struggled a little bit with trying to get everything for stonework in this section and everything for woodworking in this section. I did end up having to kind of spread it out a little bit more than I would have liked. Now, if I'm going to go work on metal things, I would like to go to the one area and have all of my metal stuff like right there. And if I were to go do some stonework. I'd like to have all of my stone stuff right there. And the way that they split up the regions wasn't like super conducive for like strategic placement like that. But like the area itself is small enough that you are able to maneuver it like rather easily. The soundtrack, simple but solid. It's matches like the vibes that the game gives. I personally found it to be kind of repetitive after like a few hours of gameplay. It only has like a handful of songs that I encountered, and they just they get really repetitive. A couple of the songs weren't even actually like loop tracks, so you would come to like a definitive end of the song and there would be like a couple seconds where there is no music and then the intro would kick back in, which I personally wasn't a huge fan of. I think that looping tracks is a much better way to go about that. And then like there just wasn't like a whole lot of variety in it, so I actually found that for a majority of my time playing, I was just playing it without sound, which is something that I do like pretty frequently with games, so it's not really something that I could say is a bad thing about the game. I do like to have like these idle games you can have a lot of fun playing, but they're not actually classified as idle games. If you stop paying attention to them, the world's not going to end, you're not going to die suddenly, and you can watch TV at the same time. And if something really good comes on that you want to pay more attention to than the game, you are free to do that, and this game is great for that, so I give them a lot of credit for that. The actual like traveling system, the cover art implied that you were able to get a mount, and there was evidence in the world to suggest that mounts would become a thing. I do hope that is true, because I found traversal to be rather tedious. The area is not all that big, but the walking pace is rather slow, and I didn't see a way to like run and like sacrifice stamina for speed or something like that, which with the way the stamina system works wouldn't be that great, because it doesn't just like regenerate. You actually have to like go and rest or go and eat in order to regain your stamina. But for the way that they use their stamina is fine, but I do wish that there was some way they could have incorporated a bit of like a faster movement system without having to wait until mounts are unlocked. And then unlocking, that is actually my biggest pet peeve about the game. The game has essentially skill trees, and they call them technologies, and they have like 4 or 5 different categories of technologies, and I found that every single time that I wanted to do something, it was locked behind a technology, and then that technology was locked behind another technology, and then that technology was locked behind another technology, and then that technology was locked behind another technology, and so on and so forth. And honestly, it's probably a little bit of an exaggeration. I'm not going to say it's exactly how that it actually was, but that's how it felt from like the player perspective. I always felt that I was technology locked, and then the currency that I needed to get in order to get the technologies, some of it is very easy to get, and some of it is not quite so easy to get, and it's rather like limited. And I didn't really feel like there was much of a balance there. I didn't feel like I was getting like enough gameplay in between. Like, I unlock a technology, I should be able to enjoy the game for the duration of time that it takes to unlock the next technology. But anyways, that's like my biggest issue with the game, was the technology system. I found it to be quite a hindrance. There's probably a lot of people out there, and like, this game actually does have a rather thriving community. If you go to Reddit and look at the Graveyard Keeper subreddit, there's a lot of people there who are like loving this game, and also I don't blame them for loving this game. It actually was a really good game, but they must have either A, figured out how to proficiently get through the technology tree and what to prioritize and what not to prioritize, or B, it just straight up doesn't bug them, which is also a fair perspective. Everything that I'm doing on this episode is purely a matter of opinion. Right? I find the soundtrack to be rather repetitive and simplistic, which is the simplistic end of it really does fit with the tone of the game, but the repetitive aspect of it, I felt it was a bit of a detriment. And there's probably a lot of people out there playing this game that would thoroughly disagree with me. They'd be like, "Nah, man, the soundtrack's perfect. I don't know what you're talking about." And honestly, they're entitled to that opinion. I don't agree with it though. And then, so like, when it comes to like the rate of movement, like I said, I found it very slow, very tedious just to like get around. But they do have not quite a fast travel system. They do have like a shortcut system where there's like catacombs underneath the world, and you can unlock. The passages are blocked by like rubble, and you can spend materials and like craftables in order to clear the rubble, and then you would be able to get places faster. But I still just found the conveyance across the world to be rather tedious. I did experience a little bit of jankiness in the camera. I don't know if that is an aspect of the game or if it's because my computer is about as powerful as two potatoes powering up an LED bulb, right? I'm rocking a rather old office computer and I'm using it to develop games, which is probably one of the main reasons that I develop 2D games, because my computer honestly can't handle a whole lot. It does, however, play Fallout New Vegas fairly well, so I don't know how how good of an argument that actually is, but I did experience jankiness of the the camera. Like, I would be walking and the camera would just stop for like a frame or two and then catch up to me, and it's noticeable, and it creates almost like a vibration effect on the camera and a little bit of jankiness, and I found that to be fairly unfortunate. But the game itself has a great sense of humor. There's a lot of funny things to do, a lot of little quips. The characters are pretty well fleshed out. There's always something interesting happening, someone interesting to talk to, a lot of otherworldly and supernatural elements to the game that I thoroughly enjoyed. And like I said, overall, it is a great game. My only issues with it was the repetitive soundtrack. The being able to get around felt tedious and kind of laborious after a while. And then the technology system, where there's constantly a technology wall in front of everything that I want to do, and that was actually that was a bit of a deal breaker for me. I played this game for probably about 8-9 hours, and honestly I lost my motivation to play, and which is unfortunate because it was a really good game and I was really enjoying it, and to lose the motivation to play really sucks. I feel like if it wasn't for that loss of motivation to play, I would have enjoyed this game for much longer, and it would have just ended up being a much better game. And it was a really good game. I wish I didn't lose the motivation to keep playing, but the fact that I did lose motivation to keep playing does actually say a lot about the game as a whole. But with all that being said, weighing the pros and cons of this game, I'm gonna have to just give it a 5.5, or on the high end a 6 out of 10, which is honestly pretty good. It's still a good game. It's only a few bucks. I think I picked it up for $7 on Steam. I believe it's also available for the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox and the PlayStation. I will double check that, and I will put words on the screen to tell you exactly what systems it's available for. I do recommend it. It is a great game. Honestly, even for the amount of time that I played it, you look at playability of games and the cost of games, and just the cost of entertainment, to pay $7 for a solid 8 to 10 hours of entertainment, that's worth my dollar value. And this game was absolutely worth my dollar value, but there were a lot of ways in which it was lacking, and for that I'm going to have to give it a 6 out of 10. But that's all I have to say about this game. If you agree with what I said, give me a like. Let me know. If you disagree with what I said, tell me why. Light me up. Call me an idiot. Whatever you want to do. Throw that down in the comments and pitch as to why this game is better than I thought. But like I said, that's all that I got. So with that, I'm going to end with the normal YouTuber jargon, and I'm just going to say, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Peace out.